right, it was you and me.
Hello everyone, my name is 𝓶𝓮𝓬𝓬 and welcome back to my channel, or two if you are new, and today is Friday, so that means it is time for another recommendation video. Today we're talking about overprotective heroes. I have a love-hate relationship with overprotective heroes. Most of the time I'm super into it and I love it, but then when just the guy protecting the heroine the entire time, and that's the entire plot of the book, I get a little bit bored. Some of them have more overprotectiveness than others. Really do love this trope. It's the kind of like touch her or you'll die trope. I just love it so much. And yeah, today I'm going to tell you guys some books for it. And also, if you guys have any recommendations for overprotective heroes or touch her and you die books, then leave them down below. Without further ado, let's get into overprotective heroes and touch her and you'll die trope. The first book that I have for this is Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. This is one that I've read recently and just became obsessed with. Callum is our hero, and I wouldn't say that he's super overprotective, but there are times, and I think that's a pretty good balance and an example where I just love it because, okay, so background. Basically, Callum and Aida is the heroine and Callum is the hero, obviously. And so basically they live in Chicago and they're both part of mafias. So Callum is a part of the Irish mafia and Aida, she is a part of the Italian mafia. And these two families have been rivals for the longest time. Aida is kind of the only sister in her family, and then Callum, he's like the oldest, and Callum's family is trying to break into politics and stuff like that. So Callum is running for a position in Chicago. I forgot the name of it, but yeah, so basically something happens one night. Aida and her brothers, they decide to sneak into one of Callum's family's parties. It's his younger sister's party, and Aida's like, I want to go. So they end up sneaking in, and something happens where Aida needs to cause a diversion to escape, and she ends up setting his library on fire. And so when Callum finds out that Aida and the Italian mafia is the reason why their house almost burned down, he is livid. So basically he finds out where they're gonna be later that night, goes, something wild happens. I really felt so bad. I was like, I almost shed tears because I felt so bad for Aida's brother, but Aida's brother had to pay for basically what Aida did. And so before things could get even messier, Aida's father and Callum's father, they decide to meet up and say, you know what, we need to put this rival to rest. We need to put this rivalry to rest. How about our kids marry each other? So of course it's a marriage of convenience, arranged marriage, so much fun. So they obviously have all these are like enemies to lovers because they cannot stand each other, they hate each other. So once they get together, it's super like angsty and super fun. They basically are like playing tricks on each other, and yeah, it's so amazing. But as they start to like feel more fond of each other and feel more attached, Callum does get overprotective, or I wouldn't even say overprotective, but just protective over her. Aida actually has like this crazy ex-boyfriend who is super like, he's just not a pleasant guy, so he feels super protective over her in that way. And some things go down, things get crazy, and it's just so much fun, and Callum ends up coming to rescue her. So I wouldn't say he's super overprotective, but he is protective over her because he cares about her, and it's so amazing, so much fun. Read it if you have not already. The next book that I have is Wolf Song by T.J. Klune. I've been talking about this book frequently recently, and I'm just so obsessed with this. This is another... This is hard because like they are super overprotective of each other. Wolf Song is a shifter romance, so if you have not read it, read it. It's amazing, so emotional, so beautiful. So basically Wolf Song follows Ox, and it follows Ox from a very young age, and follows him right in the beginning where his dad kind of walked out on him and his mom. And so you see him struggling a lot with this, and you see him find family in other people and solace in other people, and he finds his love from other sources, and it's super amazing. And so you see him kind of grow up, whatever. So when he turns around like 16, I believe, a family moves in across the street from Ox. Ox is one day walking home from work, and basically he sees a little boy, and the little boy comes running up to him saying, oh my gosh, do you smell that? And basically from that moment they become super close, best friends. Nothing happens between them. Ox is obviously a lot older than Joe, and so Joe kind of like brings Ox over to his family. They become just super close. Everybody loves Ox. Ox loves that family, the Bennetts, and it becomes just like this huge family, and like it's so good. And so yeah, obviously there is a huge threat in this book. There's a huge threat. So the Bennetts have come home back to that house across the street because things have kind of like dialed down with the big threat that basically like went after the Bennett's family. And so you kind of see them growing up together. Obviously they're growing up together, being best friends, and Joe is kind of like destined to lead. The father leads the pack right now. He's like the alpha of the pack, but then Joe is taking over for him, and he's like being prepared to take over for him. And something happens with the villain in the story which leads Joe to take over the pack way earlier than expected. And so Joe is super protective over Ox, and vice versa. They're both really dominant alpha males, so they're just super protective of each other, and Joe makes decisions that Ox doesn't like in order to protect Ox. And so same goes like vice versa. It's just super, I just love this book. It's my favorite of the entire year. It's so beautiful and so sad and emotional and super funny also. Like I died laughing. I need to read the second book immediately. But they're super protective over each other. Obviously there's like this big threat in their lives, so they need to be kind of protective over each other. But even if that threat wasn't there, I just know they'd be super protective over one another because they care so deeply, and so like it's so fiercely for each other. So it's amazing. I love this book. If you want to read an MM shifter romance, you need to pick this up. So good. I have a reading vlog for this also in my weekend reading vlog, because I became obsessed, and it's so good. Next book that I have is Dark Notes by Pam Godwin. I actually read this, I think this year. Yeah, I did. I read this back in March, and I really enjoyed it. So this is a student-teacher romance. So this follows Emmerich and Ivory. Ivory it takes place in New Orleans, number one, which I love. I love romances that take place in New Orleans because I go to New Orleans every summer. It's like so fun for me. And so Ivory, she basically goes to this this school for gifted students, musically inclined students, theater students. She just goes to this super rich school. Everybody there is rich, and she had to basically get like scholarships and really work hard to get there because she comes from not an easy side of town. She's very poor, and her dad died when she was younger, and so basically she has her mom and her older brother who basically care more about taking drugs than her and her well-being, and Ivory has to work her butt to save the house, and she needs to, you know, just be basically the main sole provider for her family. And so Ivory's also one of the best students at the school. She plays piano, super amazing. She has a super close relationship with her teacher, but then it's the start of the fall, it's the start of the school year, and that teacher's gone and a new teacher has taken her place. And so the new teacher is Emmerich. Also, I will say, trigger warnings for like sexual assault. This is a not legal age gap, so she is, I'm pretty sure she's 17, I believe. And yeah, there's a lot of trigger warnings in here. Loss of loved one, death of an animal, and yeah, this book is super dark and super intense, so just be super aware when you're going into this book. But basically you have Emmerich, and he's the new teacher, and he is teaching her, and he feels this automatic attraction towards her, and she feels it too. And so basically Emmerich becomes like kind of super intrigued by her and wants to get to know her, and he obviously knows that something isn't right in her household. Her brother actually kind of abuses her. Her brother does abuse her, and he ends up hitting her a lot, knocking her around, and it's super intense and super sad. So Emmerich feels inclined to protect her, and he is super protective over her. There's students at the school who give her a hard time and call her like slut and this and this and this and this because of rumors that are circulating around her school. So he is super protective over her from the students and from her own family. So he kind of like takes her in, and they end up staying together for a little bit of time because she just needs to like get away from her family. And yeah, he does some things. He beats on some students, he beats on the brother, he beats on people, and just to protect her and keep her safe. But he cares so deeply for her. This is like a dom sub romance. super amazing. It did kind of ick me out that she was only, what do you call it? She was only 17, but if you like dark and taboo romances, then you need to pick this up. They aren't the only dark factor in this book. There's so many other outside forces, and it's really beautiful and really sad, and there's just a lot that goes into this book. So make sure you check up the trigger warnings, look up on the trigger warnings if you have any triggers at all and you feel like you could be bothered by any of the content in Dark Notes by Pam Godwin. Next book that I have here is The Maddest Obsession by Daniel Laurie. This is the second book in the Maid series. All these can be read as standalones, and so if you don't feel like reading The Sweetest Oblivion, which by the way, it's not the best, so if I were you, I'd just jump into The Maddest Obsession, then if you feel inclined to do so, definitely do it. But The Maddest Obsession is a mafia romance. We basically have our heroine, her name is Gianna, and she's always been involved in the mafia. She's super young, but her dad is like a capo somewhere, and he kind of is always like sending her off to marry all these different people, and so she has some experience under her belt. Like, she hates that she has to be in these relationships, but that's what she has to do. So one of her longest marriages is with this guy, and she kind of like fell in love with him, and stuff happens with him. It doesn't work out, obviously, but Gianna is finding herself always getting into trouble. She is like a recovering drug addict. She is just likes to have fun, and she likes to have fun, so she always is finding herself in a lot of trouble, and she ends up in jail a lot. So in the mafia, you have this kind of like dirty cop. Sometimes there's like a dirty cop who kind of is on the mafia side and like gives them intel and helps them out and gets people out of jail when needed. And so we have this dirty cop named Christian, right? Yes, we have this dirty cop named Christian, and he is always getting Gianna out of jail because he's working for her husband. And Christian's this type of hero who becomes obsessed with things. He can't just like things. He has to be consumed by things and just super hyper focused on things. And so he gets that way with Gianna, and he becomes super protective over her. Touch her and you die is basically his like life motto. He does not mess around with her and other guys and her safety. He just feels super strongly about keeping her safe, and he loves her, and there is a little bit of like an unrequited love situation because it's never really the right time for them. They get close to being together and then something happens, and yeah, the feelings are mutual for periods of times, but then it just kind of like fizzles out when something new happens, and it's super amazing. Christian doesn't lose his drive to protect her at all. He always wants to keep her safe, and he loves her so intensely. So it's so good. If you want like a really angsty, super unrequited love story with a hero who is super jealous and protective and obsessive, then you need to read The Maddest Obsession by Daniel Laurie, and you definitely do not need to read the first book to dive into this. The last book that I'm going to recommend is It Ain't Me Babe by Tilly Cole. This is, I feel like I've talked about this recently, so I'm not going to go into like extreme detail, but this follows a girl who has lived in a cult her entire life, and this guy named Styx. Basically, our heroine, she escapes this cult because she isn't liking what they're doing. She feels threatened, her safety is not promised, and she just needs to get out. So she ends up hitchhiking with someone, and he kind of like dumps her out near the MC club. Styx is the president of this MC club, and he finds her and he recognizes her because they actually have met before in the past. Once he finds out that she escaped a cult, and once he finds out that her safety is in danger, he really is super protective over her, but also wants to like teach her about real life and teach her about things that go on in the real world. So he's just super protective over her around his own MC club, around the public. Whenever they go out, he's super protective. Doesn't really even want her to go out that much because he just doesn't want her to get taken again. They fall like head over heels in love with each other, so their love and passion is super intense, and it's just such a fun time. Obviously, he has a good reason to kind of look over her because there are people actively seeking to get her back. So this is a super overprotective hero, which I loved so much. If you have not read it, please do so. And that was the last book that I'm recommending today for Overprotective Heroes, or Touch Her and You Die. I know Jess from Piece of Books also filmed this video, so I will have her video linked down below. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a big like and a comment down below, and subscribe and turn on post notifications so you never miss another upload from me. And yeah, for now that is all. I will see you guys on Tuesday with another video. Bye.
If I got one thing right, it was you and me.